long before he became one of the most powerful politicians in Washington. Before the Senate speeches, before decades of political battles, there was a young boy facing a challenge that many believed would shape the rest of his life. Mitch McConnell was born on February 20, 1942, in Sheffield. America was in the middle of World War I. Like millions of other families, the McConnells lived modestly. His father, Addison Mitchell McConnell worked hard to support the family. His mother, Julia Deanie McConnell, devoted herself to raising her son. Money was never abundant. The family learned to live carefully. Every dollar mattered. Simple necessities often came before comfort. When Mitch was still a young child, the family moved to Kentucky, where much of his childhood would be spent. No one imagined that an even greater challenge was waiting. At just 2 years old, Mitch was diagnosed with poliomyelitis. During the 1940s, polio terrified families across America. Thousands of children became permanently disabled. Some lost the ability to walk. Others required iron lungs just to breathe. Many parents feared every summer outbreak. For the McConnell family, the disease suddenly became personal. Doctors warned that young Mitch could lose the ability to walk normally for the rest of his life. The diagnosis devastated his parents, but his mother refused to accept defeat. Julia McConnell believed that determination could overcome even the darkest circumstances. Every single day she drove her son to physical therapy. She stretched his weakened leg. She encouraged him through painful rehabilitation exercises. The treatments were exhausting. Sometimes they lasted for hours. The progress was slow, painful, and often discouraging. There were days when improvement seemed impossible. Many children would have given up. Many parents might have accepted the doctor as prediction. Julia never did. She constantly reminded her son, "You can do more than people expect." Those words stayed with Mitch for the rest of his life. The family sacrificed financially to pay for treatment. Medical care wasn't inexpensive. Travel costs added even more pressure. Yet his parents believed there was no investment more important than giving their son a chance to recover. Month after month the therapy continued. Gradually the strength began returning. Step by step his leg improved. Eventually, against many expectations, Mitch regained the ability to walk without permanent disability. It wasn't a miracle. It was the result of persistence, discipline, family support, and thousands of hours of rehabilitation. Years later, McConnell would often describe his mother's determination as one of the greatest influences on his life. Watching her refuse to quit taught him a lesson that no classroom ever could. Obstacles can be overcome, but only if you are willing to keep moving forward. Growing up in Kentucky, Mitch developed an interest in history, government, and public service. He enjoyed reading, learning about American presidents, understanding how government worked. Teachers noticed he was thoughtful, quiet, careful with his words. Unlike many children who wanted to be athletes or movie stars, Mitch became fascinated by leadership. He watched national events closely, followed elections, read newspapers, and slowly developed an interest in politics. Friends remembered him as disciplined rather than loud. He wasn't always the center of attention, but he listened carefully, observed people, and thought several steps ahead. The qualities that would later define his political career were already beginning to appear. His battle with polio also shaped his personality. It taught patience, self-control, and resilience. He learned that progress often happens slowly, that setbacks are temporary, and that determination can overcome enormous obstacles. These lessons stayed with him long after childhood ended. By the time Mitch McConnell finished high school, he had already learned one lesson that would guide the rest of his life. Success rarely comes quickly. It comes through patience, preparation, and persistence. And like many young people who were still searching for direction, Mitch had already developed a deep interest in American government. He was fascinated by elections, political campaigns, presidents, Congress, and the Constitution. He believed politics wasn't simply about power. It was about shaping the future of an entire country. After graduating from high school, McConnell enrolled at University of Louisville. There, he studied political science and history while becoming increasingly active in student life. He wasn't the loudest student on campus. He wasn't known for dramatic speeches. Instead, he built a reputation for being disciplined, well-prepared, and exceptionally organized, professors noticed his ability to analyze complicated political issues. Classmates admired his determination. During college, he participated in student government, worked on political activities, and spent countless hours studying how government institutions actually functioned. Rather than dreaming about politics, he was preparing for it. After graduating, another opportunity arrived. McConnell joined the United States Army Reserve. His military service was relatively brief. Health issues connected to the polio he had overcome as a child eventually led to a medical discharge. Although his time in uniform was short, it reinforced lessons about responsibility, duty, and public service. McConnell then continued his education at the prestigious University of Kentucky College of Law. Law school demanded enormous discipline, long nights studying, thousands of pages of legal reading, complex constitutional cases, intense examinations. McConnell embraced the challenge. He understood that understanding the law would become one of the strongest foundations for a future political career. After earning his law degree, he officially became an attorney. But practicing law alone wasn't his ultimate goal. Politics continued calling him. His first major opportunity came when he worked for Marlowe Cook. For the first time, McConnell experienced Washington from the inside. He observed how legislation was written, how senators negotiated, how campaigns were organized, and how political influence was built. Those years became an education that no university could provide. He learned that successful politicians rarely relied only on speeches. They relied on preparation, relationships, timing, and strategy. After working in Washington, McConnell returned to Kentucky. Instead of chasing national fame immediately, he focused on local government. He believed lasting political careers were built one step at a time. He worked in public administration, learned how local governments managed budgets, roads, public safety, economic development, education, everyday problems that directly affected ordinary families. He discovered that politics wasn't just about passing laws, it was about solving practical problems. As the years passed, McConnell became increasingly well known throughout Kentucky as Republican Party. He built connections, earned respect, and carefully prepared for elected office. Then came his biggest opportunity yet. In 1977, Mitch McConnell ran for Jefferson County Judge, Executive. At the time, Jefferson County included Louisville, Kentucky's largest city. Winning the election would place him in charge of one of the state's most important local governments. The campaign wasn't easy. He faced experienced opponents, limited resources, and enormous pressure. But McConnell approached campaigning the same way he approached everything else: preparation, organization, persistence. He traveled throughout the county, met voters personally, listened to their concerns, spoke about improving government efficiency, economic growth. By the early 1980s, Mitch McConnell had already established himself as one of Kentucky's rising political leaders. His years as Jefferson County Judge, Executive had given him valuable executive experience, but he believed he could have an even greater impact. His next goal was one of the most difficult in American politics: winning a seat in the United States Senate. At the time, Kentucky's Senate seat was held by Walter D. Huddleston, an experienced Democratic incumbent. Many political analysts believed defeating him would be nearly impossible. McConnell was not the favorite. He was the challenger. He had few resources, less national recognition, and faced enormous odds. Instead of relying on dramatic speeches, he built a disciplined campaign. He traveled across Kentucky, visited small towns, met local business owners, farmers, teachers, factory workers, veterans. He listened carefully before speaking. His campaign focused on fiscal responsibility, smaller government, economic growth, and conservative values. He promised Kentucky voters that he would work tirelessly on their behalf. The campaign lasted for months. Every day brought new challenges: long drives across the state, countless public events, television interviews, debates, fundraising, late-night strategy meetings. McConnell rarely complained. He believed persistence often defeats popularity. Election day arrived in 1984. The race was extremely close. Every vote mattered. When the final results were counted, Mitch McConnell had won. The margin of victory was fewer than 6 0 votes. It became one of the closest Senate races in Kentucky history. One narrow victory changed the course of his entire life. At 42 years old, Mitch McConnell officially became a United States Senator. Few people realized they were witnessing the beginning of one of the longest Senate careers in American history. Washington became his new workplace. The Senate became his new battlefield. Unlike local government, the United States Senate required building relationships with lawmakers from every state, negotiating legislation, serving on committees, studying complex national issues, national security, taxes, healthcare, foreign policy, the federal budget. Every decision affected millions of Americans. McConnell quickly earned a reputation for preparation. He carefully studied every bill, read lengthy reports, understood Senate rules better than many of his colleagues. While some politicians sought constant media attention, McConnell concentrated on mastering the institution itself. He believed understanding the rules often mattered as much as winning arguments. Over the years, he served on influential committees, worked on legislation involving transportation, agriculture, defense, judicial appointments, campaign finance, and government spending. His influence steadily grew. Election after election, Kentucky voters continued sending him back to Washington. Each victory extended his career. Each term increased his experience. Each year strengthened his political influence. Few senators remained in office long enough to witness multiple generations of presidents. McConnell worked alongside administrations led by both Republicans and Democrats. He served during the presidencies of Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. Very few politicians experienced such a long period of continuous influence. As the decades passed, McConnell became known as one of the Senate's most skilled strategists. Supporters admired his discipline, his patience, his ability to think years ahead. Opponents respected his understanding of procedure, even when they strongly disagreed with him politically. Journalists often described him as one of Washington's most effective political operators, not because he sought attention, but because he understood how power actually worked. He rarely reacted emotionally. He preferred careful planning. After spending decades mastering the rules of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell reached the position that would define his career. He became the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate. For many Americans, his title sounded simple, but inside Washington it was one of the most powerful jobs in the country. As Senate Republican leader, McConnell was responsible for guiding his party through some of the most difficult political battles in modern American history. Every vote mattered. Every negotiation mattered. Every strategy could determine the future of national legislation. Unlike presidents, Senate leaders rarely stood at the center of public attention. Yet behind closed doors, they often shaped the direction of the entire government. McConnell understood one thing better than almost anyone. In Washington, power is built through patience, preparation, relationships, and knowing exactly when to act. Over the years, he developed a reputation as one of the most disciplined political strategists in American history. Supporters admired his calm decision-making, his ability to unite Republican senators, his willingness to fight long political battles without losing focus. Opponents often criticized his tactics, yet even many of them admitted one fact: he knew the Senate better than almost anyone. His understanding of Senate rules became legendary. He knew when to negotiate, when to compromise, and when to refuse. Journalists frequently described him as one of the most effective legislative tacticians in Washington. One of his greatest goals was helping Republicans regain control of the Senate. Election after election, he traveled across America supporting Republican candidates, raising campaign funds, developing national strategies, building party unity. The work lasted years. Sometimes Republicans lost, sometimes they won, but McConnell never stopped planning for the next election. His persistence eventually paid off. In 2014, Republicans won control of the Senate. McConnell officially became the Senate Majority Leader, one of the most influential positions in the United States government. As Majority Leader, he decided which bills reached the Senate floor, scheduled debates, negotiated with the White House, worked closely with House leaders, and influenced nearly every major legislative discussion. Few politicians possessed greater influence over Congress. One area became especially important during his leadership: the federal judiciary. McConnell believed that judges would shape American law for decades after politicians left office. Whenever vacancies appeared in the federal court system, he made judicial appointments one of his highest priorities. Working alongside Republican presidents, his Senate confirmed hundreds of federal judges, including numerous judges serving on the United States Courts of Appeals. The most visible confirmations involved the Supreme Court of the United States. Under his leadership, the Senate confirmed Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. Supporters praised these confirmations as one of the greatest achievements of modern conservative politics. Critics argued that some of McConnell's decisions surrounding judicial nominations changed long-standing political norms. Few issues created more national debate. Yet, regardless of political opinion, nearly everyone agreed that McConnell had dramatically influenced the American federal judiciary. Beyond judicial appointments, he participated in negotiations involving tax reform, federal spending, healthcare, national security, infrastructure, government funding, and economic policy. Many of these debates lasted months, sometimes years. Compromise was often difficult. Political divisions became increasingly intense. McConnell remained at the center of nearly every major legislative battle. His leadership style was often described as quiet but highly disciplined. He rarely sought dramatic headlines. Instead, he focused on long-term political objectives. He believed winning required preparation rather than emotion. Throughout his career, he worked alongside multiple presidents from both political parties, sometimes cooperating, sometimes opposing them. His ability to survive changing political environments impressed even experienced Washington observers. Many younger lawmakers studied his leadership style. Political scientists analyzed his strategies. Books were written about his influence. Whether people admired him or criticized him, few denied his importance. Decade after decade, Mitch McConnell became one of the defining figures of modern American politics. His decisions affected presidents, Congress, federal courts, and millions of Americans. The quiet boy who once struggled through childhood illness had become one of the most powerful lawmakers in the United States. Yet with enormous influence came enormous controversy. The greater his political power became, the louder both his supporters and critics grew. And outside the Senate, another question attracted increasing public attention: how much wealth had one of America's most powerful politicians accumulated after decades in public life? The higher Mitch McConnell climbed in American politics, the more powerful he became. But with greater power came something else: greater criticism. By the late 2010s, as few politicians in Washington generated stronger opinions. To his supporters, Mitch McConnell was one of the most effective Republican leaders in modern history. A master strategist, a patient negotiator, a politician who understood that lasting victories required discipline rather than emotion. They praised him for helping reshape the federal judiciary, leading Republicans to major election victories, protecting conservative priorities, and remaining calm during some of America's most politically divided years. To his critics, he represented everything they disliked about modern politics. They accused him of increasing political polarization, blocking legislation supported by Democrats, using Senate procedures aggressively, and placing party strategy above compromise. Every major decision seemed to divide the country: television debates, newspaper headlines, social media. Political commentators discussed his actions almost every day. Some admired him, others strongly opposed him. Very few remained neutral. McConnell rarely responded emotionally. He understood that leadership often meant accepting criticism. Instead of arguing publicly, he usually focused on the next political challenge, the next vote, the next negotiation, the next election. His calm personality became one of his defining characteristics. Even during heated political battles, he rarely raised his voice. He believed patience often defeated passion. Away from politics, public attention increasingly turned toward another subject: his financial situation. Like every member of Congress, McConnell was required to file annual financial disclosure reports. Those reports showed investments, assets, and liabilities within ranges established by federal law. Over decades of public service, his family's financial position grew significantly stronger. One major reason was his wife, Elaine Chao, The two married in 1993. Elaine Chao had built an extraordinary career of her own. She served in multiple presidential administrations, including as United States Secretary of Labor under President George W. Bush. Later, she became United States Secretary of Transportation under President Donald Trump. She was one of the highest-ranking Asian American officials in United States history. Elaine Chao also came from a highly successful business family. Her father, James C. Chao, founded Foremost Group, an international shipping company that became a major global business. The Chao family's success in international shipping created substantial family wealth over many decades. Financial disclosure reports showed that Mitch McConnell and Elaine Chao owned a diversified portfolio of assets: investments, mutual funds, retirement accounts, real estate, and other financial holdings. Their estimated net worth placed them among the wealthier members of the United States Senate. One event received particular public attention. Following the death of Elaine Chao's mother, members of the Chao family received inheritances connected to the family's wealth. Media reports widely discussed these disclosures. Supporters noted that the assets were publicly disclosed under federal ethics laws. Critics questioned whether wealthy politicians could fully understand the financial struggles of ordinary Americans. The debate continued for years. Throughout his career, McConnell repeatedly stated that he followed all financial disclosure requirements required by law. No matter where people stood politically, his finances remained a frequent topic of discussion. Meanwhile, his political influence continued growing. Presidents sought his support. Senators looked to him for strategy. Journalists analyzed every public statement. International leaders watched major Senate decisions, knowing McConnell often played a central role. Years after entering the United States Senate, after elections, victories, defeats, criticism, and decades of political battles, one question remained: what would Mitch McConnell's legacy be? Supporters and critics often disagreed about his policies, but few disagreed about his influence. For decades, he stood at the center of American politics. Presidents came and went, Congress changed hands, national debates shifted, yet McConnell remained one of the most powerful figures in Washington. His story was never the story of a loud celebrity politician. It was the story of patience, strategy, and long-term thinking. He understood that lasting influence is rarely built in a single speech or a single election. It is built through years of preparation, relationships, and disciplined decisions. The lessons began long before politics. As a child, he faced polio, a disease that once terrified families across America. Doctors feared he might struggle to walk normally. Months of painful therapy followed. His mother refused to give up on him. Those early years taught him something that would define his entire life. Progress is often slow, but persistence matters. That same persistence later carried him from local government in Kentucky to the United States Senate, from a first-time candidate to Senate Majority Leader, from a young lawyer to one of the longest-serving and most influential Republican leaders in modern history. Whether people admired him or opposed him politically, many recognized his discipline. He rarely acted impulsively. He studied the rules, planned carefully, and thought years ahead instead of days ahead. For supporters, that made him an exceptionally effective leader. For critics, it made him a formidable opponent. Either way, he became impossible to ignore. His influence reached beyond legislation. It extended to federal courts, judicial appointments, party strategy, and the direction of national politics. Few senators have shaped the Senate as deeply as he did over multiple decades. Yet perhaps the most important lesson from his story is not about power. It is about endurance. A child who struggled through illness became a lawyer. A lawyer became a county executive. A county executive became a senator. And a senator became one of the most influential figures in contemporary American politics. His journey shows that influence is often built quietly, through preparation, consistency, and the ability to keep moving forward when others lose patience. History will continue debating his decisions. That is the nature of politics. But history is also likely to remember one undeniable fact. Mitch McConnell was one of the defining Senate leaders of his era. The little boy who once fought to overcome polio eventually helped shape the laws, courts, and political battles of the United States for generations. And that may be his greatest legacy, not simply power, but the reminder that patience, discipline, and persistence can carry a person from difficult beginnings to extraordinary influence.